And welcome to The Watchman from Jerusalem. 2018 has already been such an impactful year for Israel and America. Think about it. The U.S. Embassy is moving to Jerusalem. We had a major flare-up between Iran and Israel in Syria. Vladimir Putin flexing his muscles, Hezbollah, Hamas rearming. And on a very positive note, the Trump administration and Prime Minister Netanyahu strengthening ties between Israel and America. You might be wondering why all of this matters to you, why this very complex region matters to you no matter where you live. Well, we like to say here on The Watchman Show that what happens in the Middle East does not stay in the Middle East, and events in this region have profound implications not only for the Middle East, but for the entire world. That's why we're so excited today to have a Watchman All-Star panel to break it all down for you. We're joined by Chris Mitchell, CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief and host of the Jerusalem Dateline program. We're also joined by Ambassador Yoram Ettinger. He's worked at the Israeli Embassy in Washington, D.C. He was Israel's Consul General to the southwestern United States, and he is a leading expert on the Israel-U.S. relationship. They're going to break down all of the latest developments here and why it matters to you no matter where you live. Let's go now to our Watchman All-Star panel with Chris Mitchell and Ambassador Yoram Ettinger. Well, Chris and Yoram, welcome back to The Watchman here in Jerusalem.
Great to be with you, Eric.
Great to have you back, gentlemen. We'll get right into it. A lot going on here in Israel and in the region. Number one, big event coming up. The U.S. Embassy is moving to Jerusalem, finally. Chris, I'll start with you. It seems that other countries are even following suit now. Guatemala has announced they're moving their embassy. Why is this so important?
It's not only important politically, it's important prophetically, many people believe. And I know a lot of people, a lot of Israelis look at Trump as like King Cyrus did in the Hebrew Scriptures, where he helped facilitate the building of the temple. And now Trump is actually recognizing reality, for one, that actually Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, and then moving the U.S. Embassy. In fact, my wife and I just moved a few weeks ago. We moved to Arnona, which is right across from the U.S. consulate, which will apparently be on May 14, 2018, the new U.S. Embassy. So it's a huge deal. And one other thing, Eric, I talked to Ron Dermer, the Israeli ambassador to the United States. He was saying this very thing. I saw him on a trip to New York, and he was saying that many Jews see Trump as the King Cyrus, and they'll thank him not only this year, but for generations.
Chris, you've got some prime real estate there near the new
embassy
opening up. Yoram, what are your thoughts? And the thing that's interesting about it, Yoram, one of the many things is that this is Israel's 70th anniversary, the rebirth of Israel as a modern nation, and boom, May 14th, that embassy is going to move to coincide with that anniversary. Pretty big stuff here.
It's a major coup for Israel. However, I suggest that we focus on what's good or bad for America. Relocating the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem constitutes a major boost to America's posture of deterrence in the Middle East and beyond. As long as the U.S. refrained from relocating the embassy to Jerusalem, the perception, and rightly so, was that the U.S. was acting under a threat by Arabs, by Muslim terrorists. The relocation would reinstate the U.S. posture of deterrence. Another issue is that as long as the U.S. does not recognize or did not recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital, that forced the Arabs to outflank the U.S. from the more radical side. They couldn't be seen as moderate, so to speak, as is the U.S. For the U.S. to recognize reality would force, hopefully, the Arabs to become much more realistic in their approach towards Israel in general, Jerusalem in particular.
It's refreshing to see, especially after the last 8 years under the Obama administration, that the Trump administration on this issue in particular seems to be acting with moral clarity and truly flexing its muscles as the leader of the free world. Now, you're an expert in U.S.-Israel relations, Yoram. Things have improved, to say the least. What's your take on the relations between the Trump administration and Israel right now?
Well, it seems, and it's too early to determine in 100% conviction, but it seems that the Trump administration is much more in touch with Middle Eastern reality than not only the Obama administration, but series of prior administrations in Washington. First and foremost, they recognize the priorities in the Middle East. Although rhetorically, verbally, the Arabs keep on mentioning the Palestinian issue and the Palestinian plight, in reality, the Palestinian issue plays a very, very minor role in Arab politics. There is much talk about Palestinians by Arabs, but there is very little walk, and sometimes there is a very harsh and negative walk by Arabs towards Palestinians. The Trump administration has realized that the Ayatollahs of Iran constitutes the number one threat and challenge. Islamic Sunni terrorism constitutes a major challenge and threat. And when it comes to facing those threats, and when it comes to preventing the collapse of all pro-US Arab regimes, which are threatened by the Ayatollahs and Islamic terrorism, right? Egypt. When it comes to bolstering those regimes, Israel plays a major, major role extending the strategic hand of the US, and therefore, I believe, the unprecedented collaboration between the US and Israel.
Yoram, you mentioned Iran. We will be talking much more about that a bit later in the show. Chris, first with you, you've been living here in Jerusalem for close to 20 years. Yeah. You're on the ground every day. You have the pulse of this city, of this nation, I would say. As an American especially, you have a unique perspective on it. What's your take on Israelis on the ground? I know when President Trump announced the embassy was moving back in December, there were some thank you signs here
they were all over
in Jerusalem. Is there a sense of optimism maybe among Israelis that, hey, we have a true friend now in Washington, D.C.?
I think you do see that. We were down in Mahane Yehuda just the other day, Jerusalem's open-air market just before Shabbat, and talked to and asked Israelis this very question. And I think almost unanimously, at least the ones that we talked to, were excited about the embassy moving, about the new relationship with the Trump administration as opposed to the 8 years under President Obama. I think they see a new optimism. Now, you certainly do see minority opinions, but I would say generally I think Israelis are quite optimistic about this. Glad that they, as we mentioned before, that the Trump administration has recognized reality, like the city behind us is actually the capital, the undivided eternal capital of the Jewish state.
It's only been 3,000 years.
That's right.
And now we're making it official.
Yeah. So they're excited, I think, about what's going to happen. And I think, just to add to this, evangelical Christians see this move as a blessing to the United States.
Yeah.
In Genesis 12, it says, those that bless Israel would be blessed. And I think this is going to be a benefit in the eyes of many evangelical Christians to the U.S. as well.
It's got to be. Yoram, we talk about that U.S.-Israel relationship. Some critics say, well, what does the U.S. get from it? We support Israel and everyone hates us because of that, which is not true, by the way. But you've done a great job in writing on the EdingerReport.com, your great website. You've done a great job of reporting on all the benefits that the U.S. gains from the U.S.-Israel relationship. Talk about how this relationship benefits America and not just Israel.
Well, one example are the combat planes, which we receive from the U.S. So obviously, we are extremely grateful to America. But once we received the F-15, F-16, and recently the F-35, we act as America's #1 battle-tested laboratory, which improves the hardware which we receive from the U.S.
So this is a training ground for American military hardware, in a sense.
And one example is the F-16, which we've been using for about 40 years now. I met the plant manager in Fort Worth, Texas, which manufactures the F-16, the Lockheed Martin plant. And the plant manager told me that there have been over 700 modifications in the current generation of the F-16, complement of Israeli lessons, operations, maintenance, and repairs. You realize that we are using roughly 500 American military systems. Wow. Each such system we improve through, again, us being the battle-tested laboratory that saves the U.S. mega $1 billion in terms of research and development. It enhances the competitiveness of the U.S. in the global market. It increases American exports. The bottom line, it also expands employment. And therefore, it's a two-way street, which is mutually beneficial to both the U.S., the major partner, and the junior partner, which is Israel.
Great point, Yoram. And that Israeli military edge is going to be very, very important, I believe, in the days to come, because we have Iran, gentlemen, marching across the region. We're going to talk about after the break with Yoram Ettinger, Chris Mitchell. It's The Watchman. It's Christians United for Israel, only right here on TBN from Jerusalem. Don't move.